time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
Good moment, and welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness, everyone. This is Barnet Bain and Sandi Stewart with me, sitting in for Freeman Michaels, who is... if you're listening, Freeman, I hope you're feeling better.
Yeah, feel better, Freeman.
Freeman Michaels with the flu. So, lots going on. It's like every time there's lots going on. Has there ever been a program where we came in and said, it's just flowing along, nothing's happening, it's very chill here? Always lots going on. Exactly. Where to begin? So I want to share something with you listeners and you, San. I get in touch the last couple of days with a feeling in my body. It's the feeling of tension. It's the feeling of anxiety. Thank you. It's this feeling of that has been with me for as long as I can remember. And generally, I'm not aware of it. It usually shows up as anxiety, thinking and stories and ideas and beliefs and thoughts that drift through my awareness. But underneath them, there's a body feeling. And most of the time, for most of my life, it's been masked. Occasionally it shows up, it becomes unmasked, but I haven't understood it until just recently, the last few days. I haven't understood it as a embodied condition, as something that is literally in my cells that I have been holding. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to share that with you. We've talked in the past about how some of what we carry is legacy of pre-verbal experience, things that have been really programmed into our systems in utero, some of it, as a result of the cocktail of chemicals that our moms were experiencing while they were carrying us. And so some of these feelings, I realize, are not my own. I've made them my own. Mm-hmm. But they're not my own. They're feelings that are embodied in me, and they are the foundational energies that give rise to all sorts of recurrent patterns in my life that I have doubled down on, of course. So I wanted to throw that out there. There's no way to... There's no... closure I'm looking for on it, but I wanted to throw it out there. And I also wanted to bring our guest into an exploration of that as well. So before I do that, good morning, San.
Hi. Well, I just want to say to you that it's pretty exciting and wonderful when you can start to compartmentalize the anxiety, when you actually can observe it in your body rather than just feel it in your brain and then act out of that frenetic energy that we all generally carry. Yeah. To be able to step back and observe it and experience where it is in your body, and then get the part that it's not yours, that it was something that you took on. Now you've opened up to not closure, but an opening, an opportunity to allow that energy to move through you in a different way, so it doesn't have to turn into that frenetic energy. I think a lot has to do with transitions that you and I are in right now, and transitions bring up energy, bring up anxiety. They also bring up excitement. And there's excitement and anxiety. For someone who has anxiety in their body, excitement feels the same. And so sometimes our excitement can be expressed with this anxiety, And when you
they get mixed up.
Yeah. And so we're in transition. There's excitement, there's anxiety, and it all gets mixed up in a soup. And beginning to break it apart, I think, is the beginning to much more freedom. So it's exciting.
Well, we're going to talk about the relationship of somatic patterns and transition. And who better to talk about that with than our guest, Sonia Choquette. For those of you who don't know Sonia, she is an intuitive guide and a spiritual teacher. She's the author of 19 best-selling books, including the New York Times bestseller, The Answer is Simple. And she is the author of Walking Home, which we have in studio here, and I'm holding it up to our in-studio cameras.
And I've been reading and loving.
You've been reading it and loving it.
Yes,
every time I look over, you have got your nose buried in Sonia Choquette's Walking Home. Sonia, welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness.
I am so delighted to be a guest and be with you today. Thank you so much for inviting me on the show.
Well, thank you. So this idea of the kinds of patterns, the kinds of embodied feeling states that are laid in very early. For the most part, we're not aware of them. But when in times of great transition, they bubble up. And I suppose the only way through them, to be with them, is through them, is to feel them. I've always heard that, but it's always been a head trip. It's always been a head trip.
Concept.
It's been a concept. It's been a great concept. But you speak very articulately and beautifully about this, and you, of course, took it. You took your feelings on the road.
I did. And the feelings that I had that bubbled up were also feelings that were buried, that if I were to be perfectly honest, I may have been semi-conscious of, but didn't want to be trapped by. And it was just a lifetime of fear and a lifetime of anger and just a whole lot of emotions that I acquired growing up in a very large family of 7 with a father who kind of managed to keep us all under control. With my wild Romanian mother, he was very physical at times, and then I was raised Catholic, so showing emotions that were not deemed appropriate spiritual emotions, those got stuffed because it wasn't safe to reflect anger or boundaries or anything like that. And then taking up a spiritual path my whole lifetime, started very young working and doing intuitive work. My first class, I was, I think, 15 years old.
Wow.
That I spent a lifetime kind of rising above those feelings because that was a better place, that was a more comfortable place for me. I liked it better, rising above.
Were you aware of them?
Frequencies.
Most of us aren't aware of them, except as
no.
We're not aware of them. We just think, a fish in water. We're not really aware.
I wasn't aware to the degree that I had buried all this. I even said this. I've used this expression. I think it was in the book, but it was like I saw this movie once when I was a teenager called "Don't Look in the Basement."
I remember that movie. That was a scary movie.
Most horrifying
that was scary.
movie I'd
That
ever
ruined
seen in
me
my
for weeks.
life. And when my feelings exploded up, they were precipitated by a couple of losses. My father died 6 weeks, or my brother died 6 weeks later. My father died, then my marriage died, all in a very short period of time, my 30-year marriage. So all of that collision of events caused these emotions that I had long been numb to or didn't want to deal with or didn't recognize. And you're right, I didn't know were there to that degree, exploded like the monsters coming up from the movie Don't Look at the Basement.
But this is not only unique. I mean, you were, we are all blessed that you had the the presence to be aware and to document it and to self-nurture and to be a guide for so many of us to show a way. But most of us are not at all aware of these feelings and that they are a part of being human, and undealt with. They double down and double down and double down, and they reoccur as patterns in our lives until eventually they precipitate a particular scenario that demands they be looked at.
Absolutely. When that happened to me, it was like such an explosion of undealt with feelings, undealt with and unfelt feelings. Mm-hmm. So I heard you earlier saying, well, that's it. How do you feel your feelings? But you just have to be with them instead of try to run away from them or figure them out or explain them away or rationalize. You just have to sit in it. Mm-hmm. But I figured out a better thing to do is walk with it. Mm-hmm. And so my intuitive guidance, which I do know to listen to, and I was just so derailed, guided me to take a pilgrimage, to walk across, take a very ancient pilgrimage. I walked across Spain, 580 miles, in silence, just walking with my own emotions. And it moved the energy out of my body and freed me of that space that was occupying.
You know, Sonia, when you talk about it, I can really feel it. And even as you said, I decided to walk it, then sit in it. I can feel that moving meditation and how that movement can really work you as well. But one thing I'm interested in, you mentioned fear earlier, your fear and your anger. How did the fear manifest on the walk, and how did it transform, or if it did?
Well, here's the interesting thing. The fear manifested before the walk. Mm-hmm. When I was at REI trying to buy my stuff at the very last minute, and I found myself grabbing every single thing that was offered to me for this supposedly backpacking trip, and the next thing I knew, I was semi-conscious that everything I was buying, extra coat, I was buying extra shirts, extra socks, rushing, I want this, I want power bars, and I knew that I was buffering myself against what I anticipated would be just even more pain, and that's what I was afraid of, is that this emotional pain I'm in won't go away. How can I make it go away? Mm-hmm.
If it was only as easy as a power bar, huh?
Really, I desperately, I believed it. I bought enough. Yeah. I was optimistic in that department, but I will say, once I started walking, that fear gave way, well, one, to real pain, but that emotional pain started lifting. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Day by day, step by step, it started to rise up, and I was with it. I walked with it. I listened to it, and years of unexpressed crying and anger and rage and sorrow and grief. I just talked to God. Mm-hmm. But every walk was about 8 hours a day, and by the time it got to be about halfway through, I was emptied of that day's unfelt emotion, and then the rest was quiet, peaceful.
We're both sitting and we're smiling.
You can feel the lifting. Yeah.
We can feel the beautiful emptiness. Mm-hmm. And that resonates with me precisely because I am in touch, as I said, for the first time, with how much unfelt emotion I am carrying in my body.
And that's where it goes.
Yeah,
that's our basement.
Mm-hmm. And it goes there, and then we look outside of the body. This is like the trick. It goes in, and we look outside the body. We look out there for all the justification for why we feel this way. And as long as we're looking out there, we never get to the truth. And as you said, Sonia, by walking and talking to God and going in, that was the only place there was healing. There was nothing anybody else needed to do for you.
We're going to pick up on that point with you, Sonia, right after we hear from these wonderful people who enable us to talk about walking home on Cutting Edge Consciousness. So we will be right back after we hear from these helpful sponsors.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
Thank you for staying with us. It's Barnet. I'm here with Sandi and our guest, Sonia Choquette. So before the break, San, you were pointing to something about the outside and the inside. Would you refresh?
Well, I guess what it is it's the one-person theme. You know, we always think that the anxiety that we're feeling or the fear or the discomfort has to do with circumstances out there. And we find all the circumstances that support the way we feel, so it logically makes a lot of sense. But as Sonia spoke about walking and talking with God, I really got this image of all this energy that was out there now going in, and there's only one person who can heal us, and we are that person with the help of whoever we call on. But it's just ironic to me, and I do it myself. I look out there and explain why I'm feeling this way, when out there has nothing to do with it. It's all in here, and that's what I perceive out there.
We make stories in order to shoehorn into logic and reason an emotional experience. We make a story about it. It's easier for us to handle. I think that's what you're saying. That's certainly what I do. Sonia, what do you think?
Well, I also think we're taught to make stories about it because we've been so disempowered to think that maybe we do have our own inner medicine and alchemy if we just are allowed to go within and be present to our authentic feelings, even the ones that are not pretty or attractive, and be with ourselves long enough to get to the bottom of what's causing this pain. You know, we're such a fast food culture in terms of give me an answer, give me an antidote, give me an explanation. You know, give me a power bar, just whatever. And what I found on my pilgrimage is that getting to the place where we can begin to heal ourselves, we have to create the time and the space that allows us to do it. It's not an instant aha. It's a process.
And there is a relationship between the circumstances of our lives, the outer screen of our lives, and the internal, the buildup of these denied feelings and emotions. There's a relationship between them, excuse me, so that comes a time of transition. I think it's part of what it is to be human. It's very tempting to default back to this sort of the way that we're enculturated, as you pointed out. You know, that there are ways to respond, strategies by which to respond to everything in life, and that's a developmental mindset. I think at some point we grow, maybe wise enough to realize there are other intelligences operating as well, emotional intelligences, spiritual intelligences, all of it, and that it is part of the spiritual evolution to have that kind of moment of crisis that precipitates a transition. The poet said, midway through my life's journey, I came to a place in a dark wood and my way was totally lost. And I think that that's what Dante was referring to, those places where you just...
Absolutely.
Your strategies go out the window.
Exactly. When I exploded, I was on my knees praying to be shown whatever I needed, and I knew it would not be a mental answer, because it was such an organic, visceral, soulful crisis. But I want to also double back to something else that you said that I found to be so true. Not only does the external world mirror our internal repeating patterns, but on the Camino, when I was walking the Camino, they so mirrored my inner crisis that it was bizarre how much they mirrored. For example, my marriage imploded, and I was so angry with my husband, Patrick. I go on the Camino. I decide, I'm guided to walk in silence. I'm really honoring that until this very kind gentleman comes tootling on many days into the Camino, and he just had such kind energy, and I kind of allowed myself to talk to him, and I said, "What's your name?" And he said, "Patrick." I laughed. I said, "Of course it is. Of course it is." There's so many of those experiences I had.
Oh,
but here's
thrilling.
one that was really interesting. At some point in the middle of my journey, I met this man. Well, actually, this man started following me.
Oh.
And I just wanted to get away from him, but I could tell, when someone has their eye kind of locked on you, and I
haven't had that feeling for about 40 years now.
It's a weird feeling. I'll just refresh. I'm sure somewhere in there it's buried.
Right.
So, and my toes were so devastated, and I couldn't run away. So I did manage to get away, but at the end of the day, guess who comes tootling into my albergue where there's no one else but just me and this other person? This guy. So I thought, okay, we're supposed to meet. And he was Greek, and I don't know how we communicated. We're just in this alternative reality, but I understood him perfectly, and he completely downloaded how he had a dream about me, and he was there because he had such woundings in his life, including sexual abuse, and he was so ashamed, and I was able to hold the space, and he really cleared it, and then it's time to go to bed. Right before I'm going in my room, this guy jumps on my bones, and it's like, are you kidding? And there's no one there but the two of us. But I managed to escape, got into my room, thought, what the heck? So the next morning I got up at 5 a.m. to ditch him, to just be sure, because I just did not want to encounter him. So I start walking, and all of a sudden, out of me comes this memory of when I was threatened with a gun in my forehead when I was a teenager. And this man tried to rape me with a gun in my forehead, and I had shoved it.
Wow.
And never told anyone about it, because I, at that point in time, felt it was my fault.
Right.
I shouldn't have let that happen. And this thing came flying out of me like The Exorcist. But a huge clear space came after that. Like real estate, like acres of pure clear space. And it was so healing.
And
so all those little strange dances of, you say, it mirrors back, even things I'd forgotten.
Yeah. Oh, it's powerful, the subconscious that lives there. And then I have a sense that he never shut up again, that he provided his service and left.
There was nothing but empty shoes by his bed the next morning.
I question whether he was even a real person or just an earth angel.
Yeah. Exactly. Just nothing but empty boots.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, and when you know that, when you can live, I mean, I have moments like that in my life, and they're thrilling. They're so thrilling because when that happens, it's like, yes, that's what I'm here for. I know the truth of this, and then those coincidences or those synchronicities happen, and it's so thrilling. And then I just become unconscious again, and I forget, and I think it's just all mundane, and it's all happening, and then that crazy man will walk into my life, that metaphor. And it's like, oh, yes, I remember. I'm creating it all. It's all me. Oh, my God. But I forget every other day. It's just crazy.
Well, it's such a dynamic awareness of the true energy of who we are.
Yeah.
That our left logic brain can't, I'm convinced, can only hold so much of it, and then it's like we have to stretch it like taffy. I think that's what alchemy means, turning lead into gold.
Yeah.
You have to take that lead of that limited mind and stretch and pull until it starts becoming liquid gold that can really hold who you really are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel sometimes I have this inner picture, this metaphor of lobsters in a pot. And we sort of boil along, and we're backstroking in the pot and screaming, "Ooh, this is hot! This is hot!" And flailing and floundering and splashing, and then I sort of get used to the water, and and pretty soon I'm floating, and my faces tilted up to the sun, and it's Bahamian vacation. Mm-hmm. And then the energy doubles down and starts to get hot again.
You fall back in.
And you fall back in. We sort of, we wax and we wane like the phases of the moon. We wax and we wane and grow and shrink and grow and shrink. But in the overall, we're growing at such an accelerated pace. Who would have thought, Sonia, that we would be having this kind of conversation 5 years ago even?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And be so excited to share this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And to be experiencing the conversation on more levels. I can't even conceive of how many levels the conversation is operating on, but I'm aware of it operating right now on several levels. I'm aware of the story exchange, and I'm aware of the narrative exchange. I'm also aware of the energetic exchange. I can feel the delicious soupiness. So more of us is coming into play. More and more of us is coming into play, and I know that for our listeners, you wouldn't be tuned in. You wouldn't be following. You wouldn't be engaged in this sort of conversation, and certainly not stuck with it well into the second segment. Were that not the case for you, we are expanding and changing, being alchemized and self-alchemized at such a dizzying rate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And perhaps now we've matured to a point where we can walk home. We can experience a pilgrimage from humbled to healed, either by literally going out into and walking the Camino, or by doing it in any number of ways that are personal to us. But the meaning of these things is very different, to me anyway.
I'm getting a sense when you're talking, and I tell me if this is true, Sonia. I just sort of felt you on the Camino, and I felt the person that started off and the person who walked the last mile. And just what came over me was self-love. Does that resonate in any way?
Absolutely. That was the gift.
Yeah, I could really feel that.
Really, through each day, peeling off these layers of experience, and I traveled through lifetimes and had very visceral, direct experiences, and I traveled through dimensions my father showed up on the Camino. My brother showed up. I mean, there all of a sudden, all the veils lifted. And at the end, I was in love with myself. And no, it was not tied into what I did. It wasn't tied into what other people thought of me. It wasn't tied into anything. It was just a real embodiment of self-love that had no thought. There was no thought connected. And, you know, the best part is I've kept that.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful.
And with that self-love and self-compassion, you know, when you can go through that peeling of the onion down, right to the core, and the compassion that we can have for ourselves, for our human experience, we just do the best we can every day. That compassion, once my experience is that I can feel that compassion for myself, everybody else is okay. I don't need to judge anybody. I can really see them and see, even in my relationship with Barnet, things that used to drive me crazy about him and would make me so angry.
Like what?
Oh, one or two things. Honey.
Come on.
One or two things. But the point is that now he can say and do the exact same things. And because of the self-love and compassion that I've been working on with myself, I can just know that's just his humanness. That's him. That's what he was born into. That's the story he was given. That's the pot he's pulling himself out of. And instead of being annoyed and angry and frustrated, which always gave me the right to be pissy and mean, I can just love him and say, and understand, even if I don't want to be in the same room with him, understand that
was almost wonderful. I loved almost everything you said. So while I'm letting that settle in, we're going to step away for a moment. We will be right back after these words. Stick with us.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
We're back on Cutting Edge Consciousness. So that was a beautiful sharing that you gave, San.
So the crux of it is, even though you're obnoxious, I have great compassion for you.
I really appreciate that about you.
No. And, the point is, it has to start here.
Yes.
If I can't feel it for myself,
that's right.
I can only see you as against me, as on the other side. If I'm battling with myself, how can I have to battle with you? If I'm loving myself,
I'm going to remind you of that.
I don't have to battle with you. Okay,
no,
you can remember.
You're absolutely right. But it's so challenging.
Less challenging.
It is increasingly less challenging. Yeah. That's true, because it was not that long ago that I can remember hearing talk. The Buddhists call it non-dual talk. That there is no me and you. There is that it's one field, and these ideas they just made no sense to me, and I did not have any intimacy with anything beyond my love affair with logic and reason. So if it didn't make sense to me logically, then it was to be dismissed, and certainly the idea of walking into a relationship with my feelings. Now it's so beautifully sane, and
it's not just your feelings. I think it's kind of what you started off talking about in the conversation about being aware of your anxiety. It's bringing in all the parts and loving all the parts. That non-duality, you have to love all your own parts.
Yes.
And feel the oneness of that.
And
first.
In this condition that we're born into a condition where we feel that things are happening to us. There are circumstances outside of our control, and so we are in a control game. And that control creates all kinds of hurts and all kinds of stresses. Sonia, do you have anything to add to that or to amplify upon that?
Well, there's a couple things I was just coming to mind. You're not just walking with your feelings or tuning into your feelings. I think that on the other side of your mind, you're reconnecting with your spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And that part of you that's just pure beauty and love.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the left brain is the brain that needs to figure things out. That's the last brain to develop. First brain is the heart. That's the first organ to develop. The second one is the right brain, which has no language.
Mm-hmm.
It just is a feeling brain. And then comes the logic. So if we all got railroaded to the logic brain, because that's the agreed upon reality that we can all, validate, we get so far moved away from our true nature that I think the deepest feeling that we're all struggling with is a sense of loneliness. And it's not a loneliness for other people, it's a loneliness for ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's when I walked, what I found was I was lonely for myself. Just being comfortable with me being me, not me being someone in the world, not me being some version of someone in the world that I had learned was okay, but just being my sloppy, messy, beautiful, expanded, spiritual, and messy, emotional self. And I realized it's all holy.
Mm-hmm.
All parts. And the other thing that I thought I wanted to say is that in coming to find love and compassion for myself, my capacity to have love and compassion for other people has exploded.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I really do have a much deeper, energetic compassion for all of us human beings, because like you said, we're all just doing our best.
Mm-hmm.
So what has been the impact of your reconnection with all of that virgin real estate? What has been the impact of that in relationship to your daughters?
Well, I have two beautiful adult daughters, and I am now, for the first time probably in a long time, not full of plans, not busy trying to create something, but just present to them.
Mm-hmm.
And it is such an enriching, peaceful experience. I'm not trying to have relationships with them and do my life. I'm just kind of present to them now and present to life as it is now. And it's such a shift because I've always been a very 19 books, productive, creative, and I've dropped into this new space where I'm really comfortable being in the moment.
So they've received a gift of this, and I think it's a gift whose impact I don't think we can even stretch to perceive or conceive of what kind of impact that has when we break a family pattern. We break it on the ancestor side, but I think we also break it for the descendant side.
I'm so grateful that you said that, because that's probably the biggest gift, is that my daughters are now going to be free to be who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And not energetically be entangled in this matrix.
Yeah. Yeah. It's huge. And as you say, Barnett, you change the future and you change the past simultaneously.
Yes, you're changing.
So you freed your past.
You're changing
too.
everything.
You freed the ancestors.
Yeah, I think every emotion and every thought as well ripples across eternity. And we make it a past, present, future game, but I think it's an alchemy game, as you said before, Sonia. I think that's the bigger dance.
That reminds me just of a little story, but when you said that, our daughter, who is 26, was adopted at birth, and we adopted her at birth. And when we visited with her great-grandmother, biological great-grandmother, her great-grandmother said to her, I was a very young mother, and I wasn't a good mother. And so my daughters grew up to be very young mothers and not good mothers. And I couldn't raise and so then I had to raise my grandchildren. And I couldn't then raise my great-grandchildren to be young, not good mothers. So as hard as it was, I had to relinquish you to change the history of our family. And you are the one that healed our family by being willing to go.
Oh,
and that's just so beautiful. And she articulated it so beautifully. But you know, in a sense, it's true. And you did the same for your children and for your ancestors. It's beautiful. Mm-hmm. Such a huge, rich experience. I'm just overwhelmed with the size of it. I can just feel. I went on a little vision quest, 5 days in the desert, no food, just water, no tent, just a sleeping bag, all alone, and it was so transformational. But I can't even imagine the luxury of that time you had. You know, not that it was easy, but the luxury of it.
You're right. It was a luxury.
Yeah.
To step out of time and space and the world that's buzzing all around and just be with God, be with nature, be with my demons in the basement who turned out to be angels, and just be present. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you were present in whether it's 5 days, 5 minutes, 500 miles. I think the end result is we are changed back into who we are.
Yeah, we get back to the us that comes into this world when we're born and goes somewhere else when we die. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is so. The quality of this conversation is so beautiful and so very different from the conversations that we have. All of them are wonderful on Cutting Edge Consciousness, but
this one feels like being under a down quilt.
Yes, exactly.
On a feather bed.
It's like being in a very warm shower. It's delicious. And also, very often we have guests, and they want to share what they're doing in the world and what projects they have up next, and it's a very special experience for me to have a guest on who happens to be a personal friend of ours as well, who is here only to share who she's being.
Lovely.
Yeah, that is really what I think is important for all of us now to realize, is that just being with one another is healing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's hard to...
It's enough.
It is enough.
Yeah, it is enough. It is enough. So you are home in Paris.
It's my new home, and you met my older daughter. My younger daughter moved here with me. So we're on a big adventure and loving it. We've only been here a month, and I think we're going to stay. Feels like it. But again, we'll see. But we have no need at this moment to feel like we need to be anywhere else. And I am just so excited my day is walking and smelling fresh flowers and looking at fresh markets and being blown away by the cheese and just enjoying being in a place and in a mind space where I'm just happy to be right here, right now, in this moment, and don't want to get to a moment in the future. It feels really good to just be in this moment.
Yes, you feel like you're in an absolutely extraordinary place. You feel like you're in a really beautiful place, and it's a palpable energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a very calming, very peaceful, very beautiful energy. So I am increasingly attuned to uncommon senses. And yours is a very uncommon sensing of flow and acceptance and healing. So I'm really thrilled that you joined us today on the program. I hope that you're going to have an extraordinary, I know you're going to have an extraordinary time in Paris, and that there is some glorious adventure that is going to unfold, and we look forward to hearing all about that, to sharing it with you and with our listeners, and maybe Sandi and I will find our way to Paris.
Oh, that would be fun. I like that. I like that.
We'll make dinner for you.
Oh, my goodness.
Daffodils are going to be up there fairly soon.
That would be lovely. That would be really lovely.
So, for listeners, Sonia's book about her walk on the Camino is called Walking Home, and it's available at all fine bookstores, as well as all of the usual suspects, Amazon and Barnes and Noble and everywhere else. And
it's an exciting, soulful read, I can say.
It's beautiful. Yeah. It is really beautiful and beautifully written and beautifully observed. And for those of you who would like to learn more about the work of Sonia Choquette, you can be directed now to Sonia, fill in the blank here.
You can just go to my website, Sonia, Sonia Choquette, CHOQUETTE.com.
Wonderful. She took her French name home to Paris. So, Sonia, we love you, and we're grateful to have you as a friend and to have you on the program today.
Yes, thank you for changing the course of the day. It's early in LA here, so you've changed the course of our day. I'm going to have a much more open-hearted day than I was planning, so thank you.
Yeah, expect more early morning calls.
I love both of you. Thank you so much.
I feel
honored like I was a guest in your home. Thank you so much.
Lots
of love. Bye-bye.
And listeners, we thank you for joining us again for another edition of Cutting Edge Consciousness. And if you enjoy what you've heard, we invite you to come again next time. In the meantime, you can follow more of us on Facebook and on YouTube. We also want to give thanks to Hierophant Publishing and Insight Events USA, without whose support this program could not be possible. So we thank them. They are publishers of fine products and events. And as they support us, we hope that you will support them. Until next week, this is Barnet and Sandi. Goodbye from Cutting Edge Consciousness.